Have you ever felt completely drained, even after a full night's sleep? Or perhaps you caught yourself wondering if you're on the wrong career path? Well, this episode might be for you. So, hi everyone, welcome back to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing women's unique challenges in the tech industry. I'm your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and today I have a great honor speaking with Victoria Mensch. Victoria is a psychologist that turned into a tech executive, and she knows firsthand what burnout look like, and more importantly, how to break free from it. And in this episode, we'll tackle exactly how burnout can sneak up on you, and more importantly, how to reverse it. Victoria shares powerful tools that can help you prevent burnout and reclaim your energy. So if you're juggling a demanding job or just trying to figure out how to balance your personal and professional life, if you ever felt stuck, exhausted in your career, this episode will give you real, actionable steps to get back on track. So let's dive right in. Hi, Victoria. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here, Limor.
Yeah, my pleasure. And let's maybe with kind of your career. I know that you transitioned, you started as a psychologist and then later pivoted into the tech industry. Can you share a little bit what kind of inspired that transition and how your background in psychology has influenced your approach in corporate world?
Yeah, so I've done quite a few pivots in my life. Yeah, and that's actually what brought me to my current passion project that hopefully we'll go and talk about later. But most of my career I spent in Silicon Valley in the high tech industry, about you know about 25 years or so, in all kinds of different roles and different companies. I worked in large global corporations. I worked in startups. I had my own boutique consulting company all around innovation and disruption. But I started my career, as you mentioned, as a psychologist. It was a passion of mine. I really wanted to do that. So out of high school, I entered college and I got my degree in psychology, and then I actually got a PhD in psychology. And then I started working. I wanted to be a consulting, like a psychotherapist, consulting psychologist, and I started working. And that didn't really last long. So you were talking about inspiration. The inspiration was really to get out of despair. And I thought I actually made a mistake, right? So I thought it was my passion. It wasn't. So I dedicated so many years of my life to study this. And when I actually started working, it didn't work out for me. I felt miserable. And that was really an inspiration to pivot that, well, that's really for sure. It's because I made a mistake. So I moved to a corporate world and I started looking, it's like, what can I do with my PhD in psychology? And it turns out that it's a very versatile degree, actually. So there's a lot you can do with the skills, like maybe not necessarily with the knowledge, but with the skills that you have in psychology. And I applied it into marketing. And it turned out that it's very useful in marketing because that's what we do, right? So we figure out what people want and we tell them what our product does for them, how it serves their needs. So that was my pivot there. But then as I was going through that career, I went through a few of those cycles again. It's like, oh, I made another mistake, right? I'm miserable again. I made another mistake. What else can I do? For sure, it's a job. I just cannot find my calling, right? Until I actually figured out that that was not it. So then I found the label for this condition, and it's called burnout, which worked out for me. It's really the burnout that pushed me into making all those changes. And at some point, I realized that all those external changes that they help, but they're actually internal changes that need to happen. It's not really about the job. It's really about my patterns that I apply that cause this condition. And now I'm back to my psychology roots, and it's, another passion project of mine to help other people to prevent the burnout, to get out of the burnout in a more productive manner and have sustainable changes that really have the sense of, create that sense of harmony in their life, in work and life and goals and purpose and all that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing it. I want to highlight before we go into burnout. I want to highlight something you mentioned that you make mistakes. I don't know if it was mistake or it was how it was meant to be, but it's like um, a message I want to give to our audience is that you can always change, you can always do something different, and you take with you all the skills that you earned, right? I mean, and you learned so much about psychology and you invested so many years and so many degrees, but you gain from it. It's not like something that is wasted.
Right. I think you're absolutely right, Lemore. And I think it's very powerful, right? So it's a very powerful message. So I'm very happy that you're carrying that message as well. And especially in my career in innovation and disruption, that's what we encounter almost every day in our lives, in our corporate lives, in our personal lives. Things change around you, right? So a lot of those changes you really cannot control. Life goes on, the disruptions continue. And it's very hard to predict. So it's really staying open to that and, looking at what it is that you can apply from here to there and not looking at anything that doesn't bring you your predicted results as a failure, but as a lesson, right? It's a lesson. It's an experience. You can learn a lot out of it and you can carry it forward. So almost to the point that at some point I decided that it really doesn't matter. It makes no sense to have regret. So it doesn't matter whether you turn left or you turn right, you make most out of it and you gain your experience, you learn your lesson, and you continue on the path of growth.
Completely agree with you, and I always look at that like that, and I try to encourage my clients and also, my loved ones, right? To always kind of don't beat yourself up, don't regret. It doesn't matter, even if you don't, you look back and you think, oh, I made a mistake, I should have done that. It doesn't matter because you can't change the past. Anyway, just look at what you
Mm-hmm.
learned from that and what do you want to do and move on. I mean, I made tons of mistakes. I mean, we're not perfect. No one is perfect. And I also, I told my husband just a few days ago, well, I think that actually I should have studied architecture and interior design
Mm-hmm.
because I think this is really an area I'm really good at and I'm passionate about. But, well, I haven't done that. It doesn't matter anymore. There's
Mm-hmm.
no point in looking backward and saying, when I was 20, I should have done that. Well,
Right.
I'm not 20 anymore and I can't turn the clock back. I can just look forward.
Yeah. But it's interesting because in this particular case, right? So if there is something there, all of a sudden you think I'm really drawn to architecture, to design. I really enjoy doing that. There's nothing wrong with exploring it, kind of on the side, just keep exploring that. And I think we're living in a really wonderful time where there's so many resources to learn, to find out, to connect with other people and communities, those who like architecture. I know architecture lovers. I'm just making things up, right? But in that sense, bring that, joy that architecture gives you into your life without actually committing it to as a full blown career. Okay, that didn't happen. Now you think that maybe it could have been the path, but it's not the path that you took. But there's still and time and space in your life that you can create to explore this as a passion, right?
Of course. Yeah. And you can always change. I mean, I changed my career, dramatically in my late 40s. I mean, you can always change and you take with you all the experiences that you gained and all the knowledge you have. It's not wasted,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. I mean, even I
Right.
had a client that she was a stay-at-home mom. She learned a lot from that experience as well. So you gain knowledge and wisdom all
Right, right. Yeah. Well, you learn tons from, managing a family, right? Being a stay-at-home, it's really managing a family. And it's a lot, right? So it's a lot of administrative tasks that go in there, management, the leadership and relationship and team building, what have you, right? So everything that can be really transferred into a more kind of standard professional career path.
perfect. And before we get into burnout, I just want to touch negotiation just a little bit because that's the
Right.
theme of my season, of this season.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned that your negotiation skills evolve over time. So can you share some kind of, how it evolved? What were some pivotal moments?
Right. So I think one of the stories that I like to share is that when I immigrated to the US and I was looking for a job and I had a job interview, and everything was great. It really was a good fit, and the company was great, and all the people were really nice. And then the salary conversations came, and where I was coming from, it's not a conversation that you would have, right? So you say, well, this is your salary. This is, this is what you're going to get. And this is it. And you just take it or leave it, and you go ahead. So I actually had no idea that you could negotiate around it. So whatever number they gave me, I said, oh, okay, well, it wasn't a big number, but I said, well, okay, I'm starting. It's fine. And then later I learned that it is actually customary to negotiate about this. So I had to learn the hard way. And for those who are out there, it's really easier to make those negotiations and discussions. I really like to approach this as a discussion because negotiation has a little bit of a connotation of like we're on the different side of a barricade, right? And we need to come to some kind of an agreement coming from a different positions. But from a salary perspective, it's really a discussion. Right? The discussion is that what is it that I'm looking for? What is the company is looking for? And where is that intersection of those things? So, and it's much easier to do when you're starting a new company or a new position than to actually negotiate afterwards. Once you're already in the company, there are so many things. The inertia comes in. There are all this, kind of points that you already committed. Your own thing you already committed, right? You already made some changes. You already quit your previous job. Whatever that is, it's harder to negotiate or renegotiate when you're in the company. But when you're starting a new position, it's one of the points we really do discuss. Don't take whatever is on the table, whatever the company is. Don't take it at that value. Think about it, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and make it a discussion. And that discussion, what I actually learned should be, I couldn't just come and say, well, what you offered me is not enough anymore. So it's been a year, it's an expensive place, so it's not enough for me. That actually is not the right way to do it. So I had to kind of consult with people who are much better negotiators and experts in that. And that conversation really went much better when it started to be about the value. So this is what I brought. This is what I can bring going forward. This is what it means for you, for the company, how you benefited. So it's only right for us to have this discussion that I actually brought and contributed much more than what we talked about in the beginning. So let's broaden that. So it's really a conversation about the value. Being as an employer, being on the other side of a barricade, right? I know this helps for me as well. Now I have that experience as well, hiring people, as a business owner and, retaining people. So that discussion works much better on that side as well. When somebody comes to you and says, well, I'm freshly out of college. I have all these student, loans that I need to pay, and this is an expensive area. So that's why I want this. This is not a very productive discussion for me on the employer side, because what I am buying, in a sense, right? So I'm buying that contribution, that value is something that person can bring. So when that person can articulate what it is that he or she brings to the table, it's much easier to make a decision of what the compensation should be. And I think that's actually the biggest opening for all of us and for the change within the system as well. If we start measuring in terms of value, because then it's much easier to think about, okay, well, part of that value goes to you as a contributor, right? And part of that value comes to me because I'm taking the risk of much bigger kind of production of the company. Instead of saying, well, this is the consumer good, basket that you can afford as a marketing coordinator. This is the consumer good basket you can afford as a marketing director. And this is a VP of marketing. You can buy a bigger basket, right? So I think that's really going forward. That's not a very productive conversation. A productive conversation is, what is it that you bring to the table? What is it that value that you contribute? Does
Those are
that make
great.
sense, Limor?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So I'll just recap kind of what I heard from you. So first of all, you mentioned that negotiation, and I very much agree with that. It's not a battle. Shouldn't be confrontational. Shouldn't be like each one of us is on a different side and we're fighting with each other, rather than conversational. We're talking with each other. It's a conversation. And by the way, negotiation can be multi kind of conversations. Doesn't have to end with one. And then you mentioned like, okay, you want to negotiate based on the value you bring rather than why you want more money because of your whatever problems you have, challenges you have, or area that you live. That's to be honest, an employer, won't necessarily, I mean, they wouldn't pay you more just because you have student loans. That's not their problem, right? They will pay you based on the value you bring. So you should highlight the value you bring. And what you mentioned also, the value is also relevant when you already work at a company, right? And you want more money, more, maybe advance in the role that you have and the responsibilities. It all should be about the value rather than tenure or I just want it because that's good for me and my career. How is it good for the employer?
Yeah, so there are 2 points that I wanted to highlight. I totally agree with what you just said. So one of this is what helped me. That was a really big insight at some point to help me with my career and with my growth inside the company and outside the company. So even if you're not an entrepreneur, right? If you're not a business owner or anything, you actually can and should look at yourself as a business. When you're going and building your career is your business, whether you're a salaried employee or a business owner. That helped me tremendously. So if I would look at myself as a product, however artificial that sounds, but that's what it is, right? So the collection of skills and tools and intellect, whatever that is, that's a collect. That's what I'm selling on the marketplace, so to speak, right? And that's my business. And the way I handle this business, the way I present this business, the way I grow this business, the way I develop this business. And so that's actually what a career is. And when you act this way, when you put yourself in those shoes and you come to the table, to those negotiation table for the salary, and or any other negotiation, right? So when you come to the table with this kind of mindset, I think that really makes a difference because it puts you in the place of self responsibility. And now actually I am at the steering wheel of this because I know what I'm doing, right? So I know which way I'm driving. I know why I'm doing this the way. I'm building my career, right? So that's my product, that's my business. So I just decided that, I build it within the organization as a salary employee, but equally I can take it and build it, as a solo entrepreneur. So I think that actually, and I can tell you that again, from the employer perspective, it's so much easier to work with people who are look at their career like that because they're continuously looking for improvements, right? So they're continuously looking for ways to contribute. That's one point that I wanted to address. And the other point is on the value perspective. It actually interestingly links back to the burnout because a lot of times that's how we lose control. So if we don't measure our results at work in terms of value, we start measuring it in terms of kind of external validation from other people. How many hours I spend there? How quickly I answered an email from my boss? Did I get on that, phone call at 4 a.m. in the morning, even though I have two screaming, babies on the background? So you're losing that measuring stick of the value that you bring to the table, and that's how you blur your boundaries, right? So that actually what helps you to establish those boundaries back and take control.
Yeah, love that. And for sure, I mean, what you said about you are the product and you need to invest right in yourself
Yeah.
and be proactive. I mean, I very much resonate with that. And as when I was managing people, I mean, corporate, I mean, there was a huge difference between people who thought that tenure, like they're in the seat for enough time, so they deserve something, versus people who proactively wanted to upskill themselves and proactively took measures into bringing more value and advancing themselves. So that's a huge differentiator.
Right. Right. And then if you think about it, then you actually start looking at yourself as a whole person, right? It's not just a career. It's not like a job that I need to advance in. You look at yourself like, okay, I'm an athlete here, right? So I'm a whole person. I have desires. I have hobbies. I have things that bring me joy, and that joy is important for me because that will help me to advance that whole thing, and grow that whole thing and invest in the whole thing so that I'm a wholesome person, not just, 9 to 5, peg in the machine that performs the task.
Good. And let's say kind of shifting to burnout because I know that you mentioned that you several times identified that actually it was burnout. So how do you even identify what is burnout? How do you know that you're burned out?
Yeah, so I wish I knew that when I started as a psychologist. I said, oh my God, I really don't like people. Because obviously, right, it's not that I did not like people. So the red thread in the burnout, seriously, the definition is that it's actually exhaustion, kind of like chronic exhaustion. You feel exhausted. That's a common thread among people. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. No matter how much sleep you get, really, you cannot, recharge your energy. Hence the burnout. Like you're burning the fuel, right? The fuel that you don't have anymore. But then there are other ways that burnout can manifest because at the end of the day, it's a chronic stress reaction. So however you react to stress, that's the element that's going to amplify. So if your stress reaction that you stop eating, right? So probably you'll have some changes in appetite that you don't have appetite anymore. If your stress reaction that you consume everything that comes your way, sweet, oily, whatever that is, right? So that probably you'll have those changes in behavior as well. If you stress reaction that you lose sleep, you'll probably have some sleep interaction and things like that. But overall, it's really lack of motivation comes on in as well because it's exhaustion, right? So your stress mechanism is running overtime and your body cannot switch and your mind cannot switch from there as well. So from my from in my experience, right? So that's how I felt. Like I cannot, if there's one more person comes and starts talking about their problems, I don't know what I'm going to do. So now I know the biggest problem for me at that time was really those boundaries, right? So I really did not put the boundaries. There's a lot of research done on the burnout that people in service profession actually burn out quicker. So the research of the burnout actually came out of the research done on medical professionals. So there was a guy in the late 70s or something. He did the research on doctors and nurses in emergency rooms. And you would think that these are people who really, most of them, they came to that profession out of passion, right? So out of their desire to help people, to save lives. And it is a service profession. So you give to people. And those kind of service professions, they burn out quicker than other professions because you give. And you did not build a mechanism to replenish that energy, to put those boundaries, to recharge. So that's kind of where it's coming from. So if you feel exhausted, unmotivated, if you notice some changes in behavior, there's a formal checklist. Actually, you can go online and it's free and say, well, am I in burnout or am I in danger of a burnout? So
Okay,
yeah,
perfect. So we'll share that.
yeah.
And so you mentioned eating habits, sleeping habits, and overall like stress. And I remember that in one of the jobs I had, I was burned out because I was constantly under stress because of a manager that was putting a lot of stress on me, and it really affected my personal life. I don't know if it affected my eating or sleeping habits as much, but I was like constantly, it was top of mind for me. Okay, what would my manager say? They're unhappy with me. I was constantly talking about it all the time with people around me. So I noticed that it's actually consuming a lot of my energy, also
Right.
outside of work. And I realized, okay, that has to stop. That's not healthy. And let's say you kind of identify that you're burning out. What should you do? What's some
Right.
strategies to go with that?
Yeah. So I like to talk about two levels of dealing with a burnout. And the first level, I think whether you're in burnout or not, all of us, highly recommend all of us to master this technique. Like this is stress management technique. The burnout is a chronic stress. You don't need to make it chronic to start doing some stress management. And there is a physiological mechanism behind this. So it's basically the stress reaction is our survival reaction. It's a very useful mechanism. If you think about it, sometimes I joke with my clients, those of us who are like anxious, right? Who are stressed, who are in burnout, we're just really good survivors. Our survival mechanism is working. So yay for that. But it's a fight or flight response, right? It's a fight or flight response. Usually in natural environment, and it's kind of the way it was meant to be. If there's a life-threatening event that's happening somewhere, I don't know, lion in the bushes, whatever that is, your whole body really mobilizes around, that need to survive. So your adrenaline goes way up. Everything else shuts down. Your digestive system shuts down. Your emotional system, pretty much everything shuts down. It's only this response, and that response usually supposed to last a few seconds, a few minutes, and then you take a decision what to do in terms of the action. So you either fight or you run away, right? So it needs to end with an action. So what happens in our lives, in our comfortable lives, is we don't have a lot of lions, hiding in the bushes anymore. But that mechanism is still there. It wants to keep us safe. So we start assigning this life-threatening meaning to other things that have nothing to do with threatening our lives. So, and it could be something that's closer to us, like a bad manager, for example, because you're threatened for your job, right? So this is your livelihood, it's your salary, and somebody is not there to support you. So there is a threat there. Or it could be something, and then you expand from there as well. So, okay, well, something happening. There's a wildfire in Australia, let's say, right? So people are then, what if it is a threat to, to me? So that's how the unconscious system works, right? And the idea here is that, you want to learn, so stress management technique, to switch from that fight or flight mode that turns on unconsciously, totally without your control. It just turns on. And you want to learn to switch from that mode to rest and digest mode, which is much more natural. That's the mode from which you can actually make rational decisions. That's the mode that understands verbal commands and affirmation and so on and so forth. Our survival system does not talk in words, doesn't really understand verbalization. So that's why the stress management techniques is to provide that link between our higher brain and our kind of lower survival brain, older brain, not lower, but older brain. Breathing is one of those. So breath is that bridge between your mind and your body. And there's so many breathing techniques out there. I really like the box breathing technique because it's so simple. You inhale on count of six. You hold your breath on the count of six. You exhale on the count of six, and you hold your breath on the count of six again. What it does, it oxygenates your blood, basically. First, it deprives it of oxygen, and then it actually releases oxygen in your blood. And it sends a signal to that old brain of ours that's very powerful, that really wants to keep us safe, that the danger has passed, right? So the danger has passed. It's okay. You can relax. All other systems can back online, and we can continue on your way. So breathing is one of those. Activity, as I said, the stress cycle, wants to be completed with some kind of an action, muscular response. So it could be a brisk walk. It could be you clench and you relax your muscles. It could be, a stretch. So that sends, again, a signal to the sympathetic nervous system to, okay, you're going to relax, right? So we're ready to continue with a normal course of events. And visualization techniques like guided meditation or just meditation. Because as I said, that system, our, older brain does not understand words. It understands images. It understands, physiological reactions. So like 5-10 minutes, sitting and breathing or, training on guided meditation. There's tons of them on YouTube that you can look up. So that stress management techniques, no matter where you are in life, the pace of life is such, the distractions are such that all of us want to manage the stress management techniques. And that's what I call the first aid in burnout, really managing stress on that level. But the second level is really creating those sustainable changes in your behavior and your mindset. So that's a different set of tactics and tips and practices that we can talk about. But kind of the stress management is something that applies, I think, to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'll recap about this first level, and it very much relates to many of the things you said. It's about breathing. It's about meditation, any kind of meditation, whatever suits you. And also activity. I very much relate to that. I always encourage my clients to do some kind of physical, like body movement, some kind of activity, whatever they feel like it's good for them. I like running. I like going to the gym. I mean, while listening to music that inspires me. So that gives me a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, and also maintain health. So everyone, find whatever works for them. Some people I know like to meditate. Some people like to start with, gratitude in the morning. That's another strategy. Find what
Mhm,
works for you.
mhm, mhm. Right. Yes, exactly. But what if you think about it, the stress management techniques, what I usually say that this is kind of like a first aid, right? It's kind of like a band-aid. So you have a scratch in your arm, you put a band-aid. It's not necessarily something, it helps momentarily, it helps temporarily, but this is not something that will, create those sustainable changes. And a lot of, so if you do search, for example, on burnout and how to prevent burnout, a lot of people will really stop at that. Well, go take a break, right? And then you're going to be fine. But as we talked about earlier, the burnout really, what especially in my life, I almost at this point, I'm looking back and almost say, well, it was a blessing actually that it happened to me because it's kind of like a canary in the mine, right? So it's a signal. It's a signal from your body, from your mind, from your spirit saying you need to make changes, right? You make to make whatever it is that you're doing, it's not working for us, right? Whatever it is that's happening, it's not working for us. You need to make changes. So, and that's what we're talking about. And those changes are really changes in the mindset. So the first thing you realize is that first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. Like you're okay where you are. Yes, you can be better. So one of the things that I really like talking about is self-care. So that's what we start with. That's how I started. From my kind of burnout to harmony journey as well. And what it is, it's creating space in your life for things that bring you joy, bring happiness to you. So basically, you put together a list of 20 things that you like to do for no other reason, but because you like to do it. Not because somebody asked you, not because it's useful, not because it's good for your health or, it provides return for investment. No, there's no other reason for you to do them just because they make you happy. And I challenge anyone to do that. And I keep telling that when first I started to do this list, it took me 2 weeks to complete.
Yeah, 20
I
is a
stopped
lot.
in number 3. Yes, exactly. I stopped in number 3 and I said, you know what? I don't even remember what I like anymore. I know I used to like things. I know, think activities that made me happy, but I don't remember what that is anymore. So that's what burnout does to you, right? So what it's not. This is what you did. You go and you perform your responsibilities, and you respond to all those pressures from outside, from inside, from your internal critic, from your external expectations, and you actually completely put yourself, your authentic voice, somewhere on the back burner that you don't even hear it anymore. So the self-care really does that. There's explanation for it, but I think what's good about this particular exercise that you don't need any explanation. You just say that I'm going to postpone my judgment. I'm just going to put a list of 20 things that make me happy. And it could be really nice. And it's like, well, taking a nap in the middle of the day makes me happy. Right. Doing my nails make me happy. Brewing my own coffee in the morning and a really good, like high quality coffee, that makes me happy. Standing under the sun for 2 minutes in the middle of the day, that makes me happy. And then you go further, right? So it's like, well, what did I like to do when I was 7 years old?
Right.
Because I don't remember anymore. Oh, I remember I like to dance, right? So whatever it is for you, it's like, oh, I remember I like to sing or I like to play tennis, and you continue. So it takes time and effort to actually reclaim those parts of yourself. So that's the first step. The next step is actually do this thing, and the exercise is to put three of those activities from your list on the calendar every day.
Every day. Okay. I will
Every
go.
day.
Coffee is definitely like a one that it's very easy to implement,
Yeah.
and I love coffee. So
Exactly. 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 It's like I'm doing this for me because I really enjoy it. It makes me happy. So basically, you create room in your life for that happiness. And what that does, these are the moments that recharge your energy. And I said that's the moment that when you reclaim your true self, like, oh, I hear my voice, that makes me happy. And then you come home from work and there's all these things and you can, go wash dishes and you can, I don't know, go vacuum a floor, whatever that is, or you can go take a nap, right? So it's like, what I really want right now is for me, I want to take a nap. Right. So can you imagine after that nap, you reemerge a totally different person. You're just still there. Nothing is going to happen with them. So this is really prioritizing your happiness and your joy. You're giving yourself permission to experience that because it's important. That's uniquely you. And that brings energy, that re-energizes yourself. And another thing that's very important is that you can't really say that I cannot afford it, right? Because this is entirely in your control. There's nobody else is in control with that. You cannot say that, oh, it's because of this, this, and that. It's because of my spouse. It's because of my boss. It's because of my, I don't know, the news or whatever that is. This is entirely within your control. So it's really a matter of priority, right, that you put in
Sure.
there.
Yeah, and you mentioned
Yeah.
the news, so it's also about eliminating things that maybe increase the stress level, like the news, for example. A lot of times, like watching the news here in Israel, like it's all day long, and it's like it's creating extra stress. So maybe
Right.
eliminating some of those things that cause more stress in your life. And well, instead of watching the
Right.
news, like for example, my husband like saying, okay, instead of watching the news, I'm gonna watch the Olympic Games. So it's like find something else that kind of reduce the
Yeah.
stress levels.
Exactly. Yeah, so it would be on his list of self-care. So, well, I like watching sports. I like watching Olympics. So I'm going to dedicate some time within my day. I'm going to put on my calendar. I'm going to watch, sport games or Olympics. So, and understanding that I'm doing this because it brings, it makes me happy, right? So that's kind of this attitude that you want to put in that self-care. And let me tell you the results that you can expect. So the miracles actually happen. Within 3 days, I guarantee within 3 days, you'll actually feel that surge of energy and that you're kind of luxuriating yourself in that self-care, right? So whatever, however small that is. So anybody that says, well, I'm already in burnout, I'm already overwhelmed, and now you want me to do something extra. It does not have to be elaborate. If you can make it elaborate, good for you. But it does not have to be elaborate. It could be really as small as that. Step outside of your office, into the balcony for 3 minutes and just enjoy the sun on your skin, so whatever. That did it for me. For a long time, it was one of my things on my calendar list. Step outside and just stand on the side and just feel the warmth of the sun on my skin. And you understand that I do this because it makes me happy, and that's why it's important. There's no other reason for that. Just because it makes me happy.
Yeah, and I think that the main message is kind of, find things that brings you joy and happiness. And those kind of, what I hear from you, are like ordinary, kind of very accessible things that you have no excuse, right? I mean, it's not about
Yeah.
something that costs a lot of money or takes a lot of your time. You can find those
Yes.
small things that can make
Exactly.
a huge difference if you incorporate them into your daily routine.
Exactly. So that's really against the resistance, right? But then usually what happens is that you start enjoying this moment so that, it makes me happy for a few minutes a day. It actually makes me happy overall. And people start noticing those changes. So I'm actually showing up from a much better space. So there's much less frustration, less negativity, and so on and so forth. The people around you start noticing that as well, and they mirror your changes. So that's, I really most important, the most amazing things that happen. So similar to that, and really relates to this is the practice of gratitude. I think that you mentioned it before. So for me, I like to make things very rational. So I'm a very kind of left brain person. There's a rationality behind this. What it really is at the end of the day, it you train yourself to notice things that you like instead of things that you don't like. That's what gratitude is, right? So like in any office, you go to a water cooler and start talking to your colleagues. What are you going to hear? You're going to hear complaints most of the time, right? So can you imagine they just did this? And can you imagine that person did this? Can you imagine with this traffic? Can you do this? So you go into the cycle of negativity and complaining. It's not, very energizing, right? So it's not very uplifting. But what you can do consciously, you can actually find things that you like. right? And I'm not saying that you make them up. They shouldn't be artificial. Genuinely find something that you can thank the other person is. So the practice is find three occasions in a day to thank someone for what they did. It could be very small. Somebody opened the door for you and you said thank you, right? So somebody brought you coffee and you said thank you. Somebody smiled at you and say thank you. So you're constantly on the lookout for things to be grateful about. So that the practice is really in that. Even that employee who really frustrates you most of the time because he or she misses deadlines, and once in the blue moon, that person finally comes much closer to the deadlines. Like, thank you so much. It made my life, right? I think in the family setting, it actually works probably best than anything. Like your kids never put away toys, right? And you can keep nagging on that. It's like, why didn't you put away your toys? Why is it, what does it do? Are they going to put away toys? No, you're just creating more resistance and frustration. Well, you wait for an opportunity, you wait for a moment when they actually did put away that toy, maybe one, and maybe not to the place that you wanted them to put away. But you said, oh, thank you so much. You made my day. It's so good. So things like that, right? So you're continuously training. It's like a muscle in your brain. You train your brain to notice things that you like instead of things that you don't like. That's what gratitude is. And you can do gratitude journal, gratitude jar, whatever that is. But that's that, yeah. And what it does actually, it's also very amazing because people, again, they mirror back to you. You say thank you to someone who opened a door for you. What it's going to do? It's going to say thank you back, right? So you're actually bathing in a sea of gratitude. Everyone around you is actually responding back the same way. But that's how you change your reality.
Those are so incredible, actionable, and wonderful strategies. And I want to thank you so much. And Victoria, before we end, how can our listeners find more about you and what you do and whether you help?
Yes, so I think the main point is with my LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, Victoria Mensch. You can look me up, and there are ways to connect with me. You can go a call with me. We can discuss all these things. I do have a company that kind of talks a little about the burnout, but it's mostly in the corporate setting and the leadership, how leaders can actually help the teams to build teams that are full of motivation to create the retention and so on and so forth at Silicon Valley Executive Academy. I do mentorship and I do retreats as well. So kind of the accelerated way to move from burnout to harmony. And you can find all that on my LinkedIn account.
That's wonderful, and this is very much needed. Thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing all your wisdom today. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you very much, Limor.
Hi, everyone. Limor is here, and thank you so much for listening for the episode with Victoria. Before you go, I want to give you a sneak peek for next week's episode. And I have the pleasure speaking with Elle Ramel, and she is a Chief of Staff and Head of Inclusion Partnerships at World Business Chicago. And Elle shared powerful insights into how women and non-binary individuals can break through barriers in tech and entrepreneurship, especially when it comes to raising venture capital. So I want to call out for all the women entrepreneurs out there. If you're looking for ways to raise capital, I think this episode is going to help you. And all women in tech, if you want to grow your career, advocate for yourself, don't miss out this episode. So stay tuned and I'll see you next week. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with whoever you think it's going to be valuable for. And feel free to reach out to me and share with me any feedback you have and any topics you would like me to talk about or any guests you want me to bring. Thank you so much for listening and see you next week. Bye.